Hi friends, welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be. Hey, welcome back. This is episode 272. We are talking today about raising lifelong learners. We haven't talked about this topic in a while, and I think it's really good to revisit. So I'm taking a deep dive into how you can shape your homeschool to cultivate a lifelong learning atmosphere within it. It's a great episode full of lots of actionable things you can do right now. And I know you're going to love it, but I can't wait to hear what your best takeaway was from it. So make sure you're listening and you take some time after the episode to shoot me a message on social media or through my inbox and let me know what your best takeaway was from this episode. All right, before we begin, I just want to thank CTC Math for always supporting us and being our season-long sponsor. We appreciate them, and I would love it if you would drop them a message or check their website out. Let them know I sent you, and let them know that you're grateful for the support that they give us in helping the Raising Lifelong Learners podcast reach all of you each week. So pop your earbuds in, go for a walk, do the dishes, or just hide in your room with some chocolate, and let's get on with today's episode. So this is a topic I love talking about. Obviously, as my website and my podcast are named Raising Lifelong Learners, I am super passionate about growing children into adults who know that learning doesn't end just because you turn 18 or you're out of elementary, middle, and high school. Learning is something that you are going to do your entire life, and nothing that you want to know or do is more than an asked question away. And I'm really excited to be talking about this topic again because it's one of those topics that never gets old. We can always find something more to learn about, even as parents, especially as homeschooling parents. As we get going into this episode, I want you to put something in your head, think about a time when your kiddos' love of learning has come alive, a time that you've witnessed this. Taking the time to nurture that love of learning matters. And it makes the idea that there's always something new to learn just a natural part of homeschooling, your parenting journey, and then eventually your kid's life. And has a great deal, actually, of lifelong benefits, long-term benefits for our kids. When we nurture a love of learning within our families, our kids grow to be confident, curious, and adaptable. They thrive in life because foundationally, they're not worried about not knowing. They're not worried about being a person, maybe in their first year of college, who has to ask questions or find out how to do something maybe that they've never been exposed to. I'll never forget the story that a friend of mine told me, and I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but she talked about her daughter who had every intention of going into an art career, and because of that, studied art the majority of her time in her homeschool, especially in her high school years, because she was working on her portfolio so she could get accepted into a good art school. And as one of her general eds required, she needed to take a lab science class and had never taken a lab science class before. She didn't ever have the experience of working with beakers and Bunsen burners and things like that, and barely knew what each of the different things were. And so she sat in her first day of this lab science class, and this terminology is being thrown at her, and she's feeling lost. And so afterwards, she went up to her professor and she said, "Look, I am so sorry. I am homeschooled. I had a great education, very well-rounded, but I knew in my gut that I wasn't planning on doing anything related to lab science. So I focused my attention on book science learning. So while I know a lot about chemistry and physics and biology from books, I didn't spend any time working on lab experiments. So I had trouble following you today in understanding what each of the tools and activities you were talking about were and what it all meant. Is there a person I can talk to? Is there a tutor, or is there a book you would suggest that I read so that when I come back to class, I know what I'm doing and I don't feel stupid in front of the other kids who have studied lab science or have taken lab sciences in their past? And her professor was great. He said, I'm so proud of you for coming forward. So many people don't admit that they don't know something, and you did. And that's 3/4 of the battle in life. Now you just need to learn it, and it's no big deal. Everybody can learn anything they need to learn. So here's a book that you could borrow. And then if you want to come in 15 minutes early every day, I can run through the equipment that we're going to use that day in class and kind of give you a crash course in it so you know what to do when we get started on our experiments. She developed a great relationship with that professor, fell in love with the lab science classes that she was taking. In fact, took more than she needed to take, eventually switched majors and graduated with a pre-med degree and went on to become a physician's assistant. This is a kid who all her life was going to be an artist, but because she wasn't afraid to ask questions and learn something new and admit when she didn't know something, she was exposed to something completely different that she fell in love with. Adaptable, curious, and confident. There is a difference we all need to remember between teaching kids and inspiring them to learn. I don't, especially at this point in my homeschooling, spend a lot of time teaching my kids. And if you were to stop by my house on a given day, you would see people who don't look like they're engaged in any schoolwork at all. But my kids have been prepared for the things they want to be prepared for. And anytime a question comes up, I'm there to point them in the direction of the resources that they need in order to be successful with whatever it is they are wanting to learn. One of my kids who very, very much wants to enter into some kind of field related to animals when they graduate came to me a couple weeks ago and said, I don't think that I'm getting enough. I don't think I have enough science. I don't think I'm learning enough biology or whatever it is I need in order to learn and be successful in applying to colleges for animal-related and science-related programs. And I said, you're right. You're absolutely right. But you're too old for me to make you sit down and do anything, because if you don't want to learn it, you're not going to learn it. And so here is something you can do to expand your own education. And I gave that child a list of different things and different resources that they could explore. A couple days ago, we had a conversation because that child wasn't doing the things that I had encouraged them to try and do. And I said, look, you don't have anybody to blame but yourself. You have all of this time and you're not using it in a way that furthers your goals. And you can choose, that's fine, but you need to know when we're ready to apply to those programs, you're not going to be ready to enter those programs. And so we've had additional conversations about how to organize time better so that they can learn the things that they need to learn. They are inspired to learn those things. They want to learn those things. And they know I am there as a facilitator, a support system, and a person to ask questions to help them understand the information that they're getting in those various areas. You don't have to do it all to raise lifelong learners. You just have to be open to hearing them, knowing what they want, knowing what they need, and then giving them the tools to become confident, resilient kids who can ask questions and find answers. So let's talk about how to facilitate that in our homeschools. The first thing we want to do is we want to set foundations for lifelong learning. The best way we can do this is to make sure that our kids are curious. Curiosity really is the secret ingredient to being a lifelong learner. If you are curious about everything that's going on around you, you will always be looking to find out more information. It's like the fuel for learning. When you can encourage your kids to ask questions and explore new ideas, their possibilities are endless. they know that there's never a stupid question. In fact, the only stupid question really is the question that's not asked. They might feel like, ugh, in the moment when they're asking a question, but ultimately, as they're getting those answers, they're feeling more and more confident about the idea of asking questions in the first place. I have been going through over the last couple of months an extremely stressful situation with my oldest daughter. I've mentioned it before, she's been applying to colleges for a BFA in musical theater. And acting programs and musical theater programs and other performance degrees require not only an academic application, but also an artistic audition. There are two separate application processes for each school. Most of the programs who have these Bachelor's of Fine Arts degrees have very small cohorts of students that they accept each year. Each program accepts between 8 and 20 students out of an applicant pool of anywhere between 700 or 800 and 2,500 to 3,000. So the percentage of being accepted into these programs ranges from like 0.5 to 3 or 4%. So we're talking about acceptance rates comparable to Ivy League acceptance rates, but on a different kind of scale. And then you're also talking about the process of applying academically and making sure that your grades are up, your essays are good, you've followed all of the rules of each different application, because all of those applications have something different or supplemental essays that they need. And then also recording pre-screen videos, so pre-audition videos, to see if you make it to the live callback and audition round. And each school has various regulations for that as well. So you're submitting anywhere between 4 and 8 videos per school. And while you can reuse a lot of them because the parameters are the same, parameters are different in some schools. So I think that we probably recorded about 15 or 20 different videos on top of that. And then getting the answers back. Did we make it past that round? And are we able to schedule an actual audition? We have all of these different processes. And ultimately, your job as a student applying for a performance-based degree is to cast a wide net with a mixture of, the same as any applicant, reach schools, safety schools, and then mid-tier schools, so that you are able to get in somewhere, right? And within that process, you then need to navigate the yeses and the nos. Like, you need to mourn the nos, especially if there's schools that you are really interested in, and then move on, and then take the yeses and then compare them curricularly and program-wise and cost, and figure out where you actually fit, and then visit schools from there. One of the things that I've been really impressed by with my daughter is, as she has grown through this process and visited more and more schools in person for on-campus auditions, and been given the opportunity to ask questions about programs, her questions have gotten more and more sophisticated. She's figured out what she wants out of her training within a program. Does she want, kids go to these programs for different reasons. Maybe they're weaker in acting and stronger in dance, and they want like more heavy duty concentrated acting training, or they want more dance training, or they want a school where they're able to dance 5 days a week because they really want to work on their stamina and their physical. And maybe they're someone who's been dancing their whole life and they really want voice and acting classes to take up the majority of their time, so they only want to dance a couple days a week. And so asking those questions and comparing is important. And she's been asking really great questions that are sophisticated enough and have enough depth that she's caught the eye and attention of some of the program directors, like their intellectual curiosity about her, because she's demonstrating intellectual curiosity. We want our kids to know that it's okay to ask questions and explore, because ultimately that makes them better equipped to make decisions in their lives. We also want them to go through life with a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. We've talked about this before, and I'll link some of the past episodes and resources about growth versus fixed mindset. But basically, in a nutshell, if you're not familiar with these terms, a fixed mindset is the mindset that everything just happens. What we're getting is what we're getting, and there's nothing we can really do to change our outcome. Whereas a growth mindset is the mindset that there's always something more I can do. There's always something more I can learn. There's always new talents I can develop. And people with a fixed mindset often have this external locus of control. They feel that they don't have complete control over their own destiny and that life is happening to them, versus those with a healthy growth mindset have an internal locus of control. They know and feel in their guts that they have an impact on the trajectory of their own lives. And so we want our kids to have that because ultimately we are all responsible for the way that our lives shape up. And so how we talk to our kids about learning shapes their attitudes when it comes to their mindset, helping them to see that idea that there's nothing they can't learn by asking a question or reading a book or doing a Google search or asking Siri or whatever is important, because then our kids' attitudes towards learning is open and a more growth mindset attitude towards it. And so we want a real practical way to do that in your own home and homeschool is to model that. If a kid asks you a question, even if you do know the answer, but especially if you don't, there's nothing wrong with saying to your child, even if they're like itty bitty, that is a great question. I don't know the answer to that. Let's go find out. Let's go look it up. Let's find a documentary about that topic. Let's ask Siri. Let's ask Alexa. Let's go into ChatGPT and type that question and see what it comes up with, so we have a direction to go in our research. Which leads me into the last real foundational thing we can do to help our kids develop an attitude of lifelong learning, but really to lay that foundation in our home and our homeschool, is embracing the joy of learning ourselves. Kids model what they see. So if you love to learn, they will too. And so you want to model that for them. You want them to see you read. You want them to see you looking things up. You want them to see you asking intellectual questions. You can do things really practically. You can show them you reading, listening to podcasts, trying new projects or hobbies, taking classes, collaborating with friends. There are so many things you can do. You just need to be intentional about doing it. And laying that foundation really sets your kids up for success. And then once you have that foundation, you want to make learning a part of everyday life. This is not just something that happens in your, 9 to 1 o'clock time period when you're, quote, doing homeschool. You want to create a home that invites learning. You want books and art supplies and science tools accessible. You want them all around. We abandoned a traditional dining room decades ago, over a decade ago. We've been homeschooling. This is our 16th year, and I can't remember the last time we had a dining room. I think Molly, who is 17, was 3. The last time we had our dining room set up as a dining room. And even then, we had 2 little desks in our dining room so that Trevor and Molly had quiet places to go get some of their work done. And I know that sounds like crazy, 3-year-old having a desk. Molly was always the 3-year-old who wanted to do workbooks from the Dollar Tree and stuff like that. So that was her enjoyment, was sitting at a desk playing with workbooks and coloring books and things like that. So you want to set up an environment where exploration is encouraged. Have things available all around. My kids are older now. As I'm recording this, as I'm creating content right now, as I'm writing books and teaching my kids, but providing resources to you and anyone else who listens to the podcast or reads the website, my kids are older than when I first started all of this. I started the blog when Isaac was a newborn, and he's 12 now. So my oldest is 22, my youngest is 12, and I have a senior, a freshman, and a 6th grader. But we still have an environment where exploration is encouraged. My Spielgaben set is still out. The Montessori type tools and resources to do practical life activities, the mag formers and building blocks and bricks and drawing tutorial books and computers and tablets and science experiment kits and things like that are still out and available for our kids so they can explore and learn new things. I just bought a bunch of oven bake clay, and they're exploring that again. It's important to open up the opportunities for your kids so that learning and exploration is just part of life. One of the ways that you can do this practically is through interest-led learning and strewing. I've talked about strewing before on the website. I actually still have an email series about strewing. I'll link it in the show notes for this episode. It's a simple, like 5 or 6 email series that comes over the course of 5 to 10 days with ideas, practical ideas for you to implement strewing in your own homeschool. And I created it years ago. It's still applicable today and still set up to automate. So check it out if you are interested in that. But letting kids' interests guide their education gives you the opportunity to lean into what your kids are good at, what they like, what their passions are. And then strewing is like strategically placing interesting books or puzzles or materials for them to discover and give a try to. It's how we've started weaving in the past, or clay, or crocheting, or reading certain types of books. Key to any of that kind of stuff is to not get your own ego tied up into it, because if something doesn't catch on, you want to be able to let it go and move on to the next thing and not invest a bunch of time and money into it so that you're disappointed if something doesn't kick in. But it also gives you the opportunity to really see what your kids are interested in. Hey there. Okay, you've heard me talk about CTC Math for a long time, and I've been sharing testimonials from other people about it, but I want to share my own right now because it's been a while since I've talked about how we're using CTC Math. CTC is an amazing sponsor. They support our work here at the podcast. They actually sponsor a lot of different homeschool businesses and magazines and events because they're so committed to making sure that the homeschool resources you have at your fingertips are available to you, that you have access to what you need when you need it. I love CTC Math for that part of who they are, but I also love CTC Math as a customer. I have been a paying customer for years and years. My kids are using it in very different ways, and this is what I want to talk about. I've talked before about its adaptability, but let's talk about this. I'm 16 years into homeschooling. This is my 16th year, and our kids are using it very differently. I've got one kiddo who's very advanced in math. That kiddo is a grade level and a half ahead, and I have their level set to mastery at 90%, meaning they have to get 90% or above to move on to the next set of math problems because that child doesn't have to speed through it. They're already a year and a half ahead. And so I want them, if they're going to continue to accelerate, I want them to accelerate with deep understanding. My other kiddo who's currently using it is right on grade level, maybe a couple lessons behind. And so that kiddo's mastery is set at 80% because I don't need that kiddo to understand every single section and get every single problem right. I need that kiddo to understand the big picture of the concepts, get at least a B's level of work done so that they can move on to the next level, because that particular kiddo is probably not going into a mathy career, but they need the basic understanding. CTC allows the flexibility to do that. If you've got a kiddo, say in late elementary school, who is absolutely brilliant in math and can skip ahead to some high school level math, your subscription includes all the way up to calculus. You don't have to wait. You don't have to buy multiple levels of programs. If you've got a kiddo who you hit a snag and you realize, oh my gosh, we missed that section when we were learning third grade math and now we've got to go back to do it. You don't have to go out and buy a third grade math workbook. You just go to the section in the third grade math program level and have your kiddo do that. How flexible is that? You have every level from kindergarten all the way to calculus at your fingertips for a very affordable price. Check out ctcmath.com. If you go over to the show notes and you click on the link, it will give you whatever the current discount or special they're offering Raising Lifelong Learners listeners, and you can check that out and take advantage of that. I so appreciate CTC. I know you're going to love it, and if you don't, they have a money-back guarantee, so you really do have nothing to lose. If you have any questions about CTC, you can always reach out to me, and I'm happy to answer those questions. All right, let's get back to today's episode. Also, remember that learning can happen outside of a curriculum. You don't have to have a curriculum in order to do everything successfully. We loosely use curriculum. We mostly use curriculum here in our homeschool as a guide. I've got lots and lots of different curricular options to choose from the resources that I've used and found over the years. This includes some history curriculums and some geography curriculums and some science curriculums, things like that. The only curriculum we use consistently is our math curriculum. And you've heard me talk about that before. I've talked about it on this episode. CTC Math is the one that we use. We've used others in the past, but now we are huge fans of CTC Math. It's one of those things that gives me a break and gives them a super strong foundation. But you can also learn through life: grocery shopping, cooking, nature walks, DIY projects. Turn real life moments into learning opportunities as often as you can. What if your kiddo hates learning? Like, how do we overcome some of the challenges and the roadblocks to developing lifelong learners in our kids? I would say here's the thing. Everybody likes to learn. They just might not think what they want to do or learn about is actually learning. And that tends to be because society places learning and school into this box of science, math, history, language arts, writing, reading, whatever. But our kids are interested in learning things all the time. We just need to help them see how they can use those things in both an interest-loved and practical way. When our kids seem to hate learning, let's first identify the root causes. Are they burnt out? Are they just tired of everything that's being thrown at them? Do they feel this intense pressure to perform? Are they afraid of failure? Are they afraid of success? Are they afraid they're going to be expected to do too much if they show they're good at something? Are they bored with the way things are being delivered, with the topics that are being delivered? What is the root cause? Let's figure that out and then address that individually. One of the best things we can do is figure out the root causes and try to work around them while leaning in to the things that we know they want to learn about. Those kinds of ideas, leaning really far into what they love, builds a reignition map. We're able to reignite their curiosity and their joy based on them just being interested in something specific and being able to focus a lot of their time on those things. We also need to overcome the challenge of balance, right? We need to balance freedom and structure. How much structure is too much? How much freedom is too much, right? Some of our kids, especially our neurodivergent kids, need more structure than others. Some of our kids, especially our profoundly gifted kids, need more freedom to choose the things that are interesting to them. Finding the right balance for your child's needs is an important challenge to overcome because not every kiddo is made up the same way. The saying that you've heard me say before, and probably many other people, if you've met one gifted, twice exceptional, neurodivergent kiddo, you've met one. Just because they have the same diagnosis does not mean they move through this world in the same way. In fact, studies tend to show, especially anecdotally, that gifted, twice exceptional, neurodivergent kids are just as different from one another as they are from the general population. So if you've met one, you've met one. You need to really look at your kiddos and figure out who needs what and what kind of structure is important. That's going to be a very personal decision and something that's going to come by trial and error. And it's also something that's going to change as your kids change. You may be in a period where your kids need a ton of structure. They need schedules written out or checklists or whatever. And then 6 months from now, they need a little bit more freedom to really take deep dives into some things that they're interested in so they can develop projects related to them. Another thing, especially because your kiddos change so much and there's so much asynchrony in your life, homeschool moms of neurodivergent kiddos get burnt out pretty easily. It's hard to remember and tell ourselves that our homeschooling does not need to be Pinterest perfect or social media worthy. It just needs to be ours. We need to give ourselves permission to take breaks and recharge as needed. We need to understand that there's going to be seasons in our lives, and sometimes we need to step back, and sometimes we need to put our foot on the gas pedal and move forward at an accelerated pace. Over the last several months, I traveled a ton with my older daughter. We were at a different school or a different audition situation every weekend for 8 weeks. And some weeks we were gone for 3 days, some weeks we were gone for 7 days. And so there was a lot of stepping back and loosey-goosey kind of structure for my younger two kids at home. And by younger two kids, you have to remember I'm talking 15 and 12. But they just didn't have somebody there with them all day long checking all of their boxes to make sure that they were doing what they needed to do. And so we fell behind a little bit if we were going by regular school schedules, right? That said, I've been home a week with no travel, and we've already caught up quite a bit. The house is a little bit cleaner. The kids are a little bit more structured. So you need to remember that things are going to ebb and flow as homeschool moms, period. But especially when you're dealing with creative, talented, gifted, twice exceptional, neurodivergent kids, and sometimes your schedule's going to fluctuate. Sometimes you're going to feel burnt out and you're going to need to take a break. And sometimes you're going to feel just great and you're going to want to cruise through it, and you're all going to be vibing with this let's learn feel, and you're going to do more and more. All of that is okay. Give yourself permission to feel what you feel and take breaks when you need to and move forward when you have the time. What are some practical things that we can do? Okay, let's talk about that. Some practical things you can do today, right now, to start building that idea, that feel in your home where you're cultivating an atmosphere of lifelong learning. One of the things you can do that seems counterintuitive to learning but actually isn't is you can play more games. Board games, card games, logic puzzles, all of these build and teach valuable skills. Some of them are more creative and cognitive and critical thinking like skills. Some of them are more practical if you've got a game that requires math computation during it. But playing more games gives you time to connect as a family, but also builds in that learning through play that is a natural part of childhood and helps kids see that they can do that long into their adult life. Another thing that you can do practically to create an environment of lifelong learning in your home is you can flip the script. Have your child teach you about a topic that they love. Let them teach you something. I don't know anything about video games. I just don't. I don't really want to know everything about video games, but I was having a disagreement with one of my children, we'll just say, yesterday, where they had told me something that didn't make sense to me when I asked them to get off of a game. And later, when I went back in and said, "You're not off, you should have been off a long time ago," they said, "No, I told you blah, 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 blah," whatever it was. It's Greek to me. And that meant I had to do X, Y, and Z before I could get out of the game safely. And it took this amount of time, and I'm still working on it. I probably need another 10, 15 more minutes. And I'm like, okay, you didn't explain that to me. You said blah, 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 which did not make any sense to me. But had you told me I need to do A, B, and C because that's X, and Y is blah, 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 and this will get me to this point where I can preserve whatever growth I've made in this game so that I can come back tomorrow and play at this level, I would have been like, okay, that makes sense, but please get off when you get to that point. Instead, now I'm angry because you threw a bunch of words at me that I don't know. So teach me what you're talking about, and then we can go from there. That's just one example. One of my daughters is taking crochet. I could have her teach me that. There's lots of different things that we can do. You can also plan a family adventure with everybody having a say in it. Museums, nature hikes, road trips with educational twists, all of these qualify, but have your kids be involved. Years and years ago, we took a long road trip out Route 66 to get to a convention that I was speaking at. And we gave the kids a map of historical sites along Route 66 and told them to look into anything that seemed interesting to them based off its name, and then choose 2 places that they really wanted to see. And interestingly, all 4 of my kids chose 2 different places and none of them crossed over. So we had 8 different things that we wanted to see, and each of the kids that picked those things told us about those before we got there. It was a lot of fun, and we still remember it. My kids still have the road trip lore. They'll say, yeah, when we were on the road trip, it's just the road trip at this point. But family adventures can create this practical way of having a lifelong love of learning. Encourage self-directed projects. Let kids explore their passions through hands-on projects. I was talking to a friend the other day based off of several different conversations I've had with coaching clients recently, as well as people who have belonged to my membership for a long time. and I'm working out a program to launch within the next couple of months where I help you help your kids with self-directed learning projects. Because one of the most common questions I get is, how do I do this? How do I help my kids? Number one, follow their interests or be self-directed. To hold them accountable for learning and have some kind of structure to their projects and their ideas. And so something that I am working on for you and your kids for this coming school year is small group cohorts where we're working together, me facilitating their discussions and their projects, and teaching them on a weekly basis, like one aspect of finding interests, diving into them, abandoning things that become mundane and you realize when you start looking into it that it wasn't really what you were thinking about, and then picking something new and then sticking with it, and how to do the next step and the next step, and then how to demonstrate your learning and how to then have it relate to subjects or topics that you're interested in, or transcript it and talk with the parents about that too, and have small group sessions with the kids, students, teens, where they're talking with me and with each other, and then a forum where they can talk about what they're working on in between those group sessions, and then some accountability pieces for parents to help them transcript it. And then do that, in these small group sessions over a period of numerous weeks until they have a project, so that you can really encourage your kids to be self-directed and find their way. But you can have some facilitation help, and I can help you and I can help them, because I love it and I love working with kids, and it's something that many of you have asked me about. Anyway, as a side note, if that sounds interesting to you, hit reply on any email you get from me, or go over to the show notes for this episode and go down to the bottom where it says email me or leave me a message, and send me a voicemail, send me an email, send me a message that this is something that you're interested in. I'll have a wait list page up soon so that you can put your name on a wait list if you are truly interested in it. But I think it's going to be a cool thing, and I'm really excited about it. And it's, again, something that I've been asked about, this kind of coaching of the kids to help them discover their projects. Finally, one of the best ways that we can facilitate a love of learning within our home and an atmosphere that celebrates lifelong learning is to celebrate curiosity, praising process, not just outcome. It's really hard to not get sucked into that idea of outcome when the process is really important. And I think that it is important for us to model that for our kids, not just celebrating their curiosity and their processes, but our own as well. Hey, I did this, like I took the time to learn about this or study this or create this. And so I'm going to treat myself to a boba or something because it's something that I love. Praising the process and celebrating the process is super important as you grow. Molly and I implemented that actually during this whole audition process, the idea of a post-audition treat. And her very first audition was a big one. It was a whole weekend with 2 big schools, as well as a mock audition with her coaching company. And I bought her a surprise, a sweatshirt that was very fun, and had it waiting for her after her last audition of that weekend. And said, this is your first post-audition treat. And we went out and celebrated we were in New York, and we celebrated with her wearing her sweatshirt and going to get New York pizza. But the idea of that post-audition treat, the process is the important part. You can't do anything about the outcome. You can only put everything you've got into the preparation and the presentation and what you do in the room. And after that, it's out of your hands. And celebrate the achievement, celebrate the curiosity, celebrate the process. Give yourself a treat. Okay, remember, when you are cultivating a lifelong love of learning in your home, you don't have to be a perfect teacher. You just really have to be a guide that keeps that curiosity alive. Small changes lead to big results over time. Process over product. Try one of the strategies and send me a message. Tell me what your experience was. How did this make you feel? How was it between you and your kiddo? Let me know. Connect with me on social media. Share your experiences with me through email or a social media share and tag me. I want to know. I want to know how things are going with you and how you are cultivating a lifelong love of learning within your home. Also, if you have an idea for a future podcast guest or topic, I would love for you to shoot me a message. Send me a voicemail or send me an email and let me know what it is you want me to share with you, because I'm now that audition season is over and we are just waiting for results, I am really shaping up my 2025 calendar. I'm going to be doing interviews again because I have more disposable time, thank goodness. And I really want to make this podcast for the rest of this year what you need and what you're looking for. So shoot me a message and suggest some future topics or guests. Check out the show notes for this episode. I will have resources on the website and other podcast episodes related to this topic, and share it with somebody you think would benefit from it. Another shout out to CTC Math. Thanks as always for sponsoring us. I so appreciate their support. Check them out if you're looking for a math program. They really have. I appreciate you all. I know there's a lot you can do with your time, but you're taking it and spending it here. You're a great parent. You're learning about how to make your homeschool and your parenting and your kids' lives better. That's amazing. So be proud of yourself and celebrate that curiosity too. I will be back next week, same time, same place, with another episode. I can't wait to talk to you then. Have a great week. Love on your kids. And I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.